good evening and welcome to the Now Debate. I'm Jared Walters here with my good friend and colleague, Mr. Richard Oliver, and tonight we have Deborah Monshin with us. Deborah is a past life regression hypnotherapist with over 20 years experience of working with people with hypnosis, past lives, and helping people to heal through their past lives as well. So both of you guys, welcome to the show. How are you doing, each of you today? How are you doing, Deborah?
Very well, thank you. Great to be here with you.
Thank you for coming on. I am absolutely looking forward to having this discussion. Past lives is something I'm really, really passionate about. And I've actually had a few experiences myself, which we'll probably share as the show goes on. Richard, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited about this one. It's like me and Deborah were just talking, and past lives is something, as you know, Jazz. We've done quite an extensive bit of research into past lives, and it's just a fascinating field of discovery. I just think it's amazing. You know, it's something that should be, a lot more discovery into it should be done. A lot more education and stuff. It's incredible.
And Deborah has kindly said, if any of you guys on the chat have questions, please do write them into us and we'll answer them during the show. But if any of you guys watching, I know there's a couple of you, I can see you, don't be shy. Just let us know if you can hear us okay. Just let us know if you can hear us okay on the chat. And we well, okay, so let's get the show on the road. So Deborah, would you like to start off by maybe telling us a little bit about yourself, your experiences, and that sort of thing, and we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a past life regression therapist. I'm working out of South Cumbria in the north of England. And I was just saying to Richard earlier that I originally got into the past life regression about 25 years ago. I was looking for a training course for clinical hypnotherapy because I was just very impressed with how you can fast track healing through hypnosis and hypnotherapy much, much quicker than you can through counselling and other talking therapies. And I particularly chose a course that focused on past life regression as well, because it was something back then it was very, very rare to actually come across anything to do with past lives or anything to do with reincarnation therapy. So I kind of jumped on this, and I actually trained up in Scotland with a fantastic couple. Reincarnation is something I've always been interested in. Ever since I was about 10, 11, I had what I realised later was actually a past life dream. When I was about 6 or 7, I had a dream that I was lying in a stone room with a heavy, something really, really heavy over my chest. And I was there for days and it got heavier and heavier and heavier. And it wasn't until about 10 years later, when we were studying history, that I kind of had this weird flashback memory that what it was they used to do to people was lie them down, put a door or planks of wood on their chest and then load stones onto it and basically crush you to death. Yep. And I instantly recognized that was this dream I had when I was about 6 years old. And then I was left thinking, well, crikey, what was that? And it was just through reading that I discovered it was actually a spontaneous past life dream recall. So that obviously kind of expanded my interest in the whole field of reincarnation. And one Saturday afternoon when I was about 15, I was walking down my local high street and a Buddhist came up to me and he just gave me a book and he said, "You need to read this book." And right, thank you very much.
Don't you just love experiences like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just like a book on reincarnation, and I was just sort of, wow, just totally blown away by that. So that started this massive journey into finding out more about reincarnation and how it can heal, definitely. So that's me, really. So I do one-to-ones, but since COVID thing and lockdown and everything, I've been doing a lot more online workshops. So I do workshops for past life regression. Not so much using hypnotherapy, because we were talking about that earlier, about how people sometimes have a bit of a fear or a phobia and are uncertain about hypnosis and how it works. I tend to use guided visualization, relaxation techniques and focusing techniques, or I do dowsing with a pendulum, which is another really fun way of getting past life information without having to put yourself in an altered state of consciousness. There's lots of different ways you can access that information.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
I've actually been under past life regression. It was about 10 years ago. I've had quite a few past life dreams, and I've recalled several basically of them. I've had several instances in my life where I will just recognize a person. I've never met them before. I don't know if I'm Adam, and I'll just have this pull towards them. I'll be in the same room as them, or like sometimes it's been over a Skype call, or it's been over like there's been several. I actually had it with you, Rich. Just a sense of knowing, as if it's weird. It's like as if I know that person somewhere. I have a connection with that person. It's the strangest feeling, and I had several different past life dreams when I was younger. But to be honest with you, I had one that shook me up quite a lot recently, where I was evacuating a town after what it looked like some sort of natural disaster. And I don't know whether it's a volcano eruption or what it was, but it was actually, funny enough, this is going to sound a bit crazy, but this is where the story came from. I was actually watching the television show Ancient Aliens, and I kind of watch it, you know, there's some good stuff in there, but I generally just tend to watch it for fun. Being involved in this sort of stuff, I'm not like you, Rich. I know you love those sorts of shows, but I kind of had it on sort of passively, and they showed this city, which I think is like in Pakistan, and it's near like these mountains, but it's an incident that was very similar to Pompeii, where there was like an explosion or some sort of eruption, and it literally they had evacuated the town first, and the people who were left were basically incinerated, and it had a very similar sort of thing to Pompeii. But this was basically in Pakistan, and it was like it was quite a while back. But what I saw when they were actually at the place, and I'd never seen this place before in my life, was what I saw in the dream. And it was weird. It was like as if in a later life, it was like the past life dream was in two sections. It was the one I felt the death, I died in the dream. And I don't know if it was me coming back as a spirit, or if it was me in a later life, literally looking at going to visit that city again and kind of like seeing what had happened. Because in the dream, when the explosion happened, it literally it hit me like that. I think it was like so explosive that you wouldn't have known what happened to you. You literally would have just been instantly dead, like. And that was one of them. But I had quite a few of these instances, and back in 2008, 2009, it was actually getting on top of me. So I went for regression hypnosis, and it's a really, really strange feeling when you go through it, because you are completely aware of where you are, as in sitting in the chair with the hypnotist, but you're also aware of all these other things happening around you as well, and you have like confirmation and things. I've had confirmation of things as I've moved forward. Like I've been able to find certain details and different things like that. So it's a really, really fascinating subject, and I wonder like how many other people, when you talk to people who come for regression, do they have similar stories? Like they've had dreams, or they've had like some sort of insight into what has happened to them in a former life?
Yes, I mean, you've got very much two kinds of people that come for regression. Some people have got, like you said, very definite idea. They've either had a dream, or they have a physical problem that hasn't resolved itself in the current lifetime, regardless, they've gone through all the tests and everything, or they just want to explore and just see what if. But generally, I'd say most people have some idea of what's happened. I mean, a lot of people have had card readings, or a lot of people have been told, oh, you've been such and such in a past life, or I feel you've brought I know some anger issues from your past life, or you have headaches, don't you? That's from a past life situation. You need to go and get it looked at. So there's quite a lot of that. So some people do have quite a good idea of what's going on. But having said that, when you go through a regression, even if somebody came to you, say, for a specific thing to get solved, what happens is, with the best intentions of the world, you could go into that regression looking for that answer, but your subconscious will show you whatever you need to know right now, and that might not be it. So you've really got to keep a totally open mind with regards to whatever comes up.
Yeah. I've get a little bit of feedback there. I've always found sometimes it's interpreted in what you know and understand. So you'll see, like, if I have a past life dream or like a past life vision, or like through meditation or something, I might see the person as they have appeared in this life, but it's not that person. It's kind of representative of a previous life, but it's what's actually, I might see it in kind of line of like what I understand from this life. And I think that's one of the things I've found personally when I've actually had these experiences, and they've been quite, some of them have been quite difficult. They've been quite difficult to sort of get in your head, like, because you can sometimes have like thoughts and feelings for like strangers come up in your mind. It's like as if like you'll remember like the love you had for someone, or you might remember you hated someone, and you've got to kind of like check yourself and recorrect, that it was a different era, it was a different time. Does that make sense? Have you encountered that before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very important when you go for regression that the person that you're having guide you through it deals with all those issues as they come up. And you need to clear the karma as well, obviously. I mean, a classic example, last year I had a gentleman come to see me that regressed to when he was in the Second World War as a Nazi officer in the SS. And you can imagine that's going to really kind of freak you out a little bit. But bless him, he was he said, I'm not going to tell you the sort of things I did, but he could, we worked through the healing on that level, we worked through the karma, and he was able to separate it, I am me now, that was me then. And he'd had a lifetime in between the two, which helped to sort of break it up. But it led him to understand himself more about how he has certain attitudes and certain thoughts, and that he sort of could really understand that. So it's very important that you're working with somebody that can help you literally separate those two lifetimes and help you understand that, who you were then is not necessarily who you are now.
Yeah.
And I think getting the big picture perspective of why you incarnate is very much a case of, you're a spiritual person having a physical experience in a physical world, and the idea of that is that you are here to learn every single thing it is possible to learn, and have every single experience it is possible to experience on this plane to develop the journey of your soul. So you're going to have horrible lifetimes like that. You're going to have lifetimes where you're the victim. You're going to have lifetimes where you're the predator, if you like, for a different way of putting it. So it's understanding that is just part of what makes you, the whole entirety of your soul.
You brought up something quite. Would you mind? Could you turn? Have you got like a speaker on or something, Deb? Do you mind? Have you got us coming through like a speaker or something?
No. Can you not hear me very well?
No, I can hear you. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. It's not too much. It's just a tiny. I was thinking if it's like a speaker or something you were listening to a song, could you turn the volume down just very, very, only just a touch? It's just slightly coming through as a tiny bit of feedback.
Okay, I'm not sure.
That's okay. That's a little better. Can you still hear me? Okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. We've got a little bit there. It might be the fact it's just turning the gain up, or you get some mics that do that. You brought up a really interesting point there that I wanted to highlight. You said that the gentleman you spoke to last year had a past life as an SS officer. So we're probably going back, about 70 to 80 odd years then, and he had a lifetime in between. So
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, is there, like, have you noticed if there's like a set length of time where, because obviously what I say to people, if you believe in an afterlife, you also believe in a before. It stands to reason there's a before life. There's a place you've come from, you come here, and then you go back to that place.
Yeah.
So is there like any consistency you've found, or on the length of time in between, or is there any sort of different things that have come up around your work, like speak to how long we spend between lifetimes? Does it vary between people? Is there like people who've, you know, like a standard type thing between people? Have you got? Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
question?
No, it's completely random. I mean, you've got to remember that time doesn't actually exist. Linear time doesn't actually exist. So that all goes out the window. I mean, it's just, you know, you can, you know, it just gets bigger and bigger the more you think about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have people that can incarnate straight away. What tends to happen, when we do a regression, you do go through the death experience. It's very important to go through the death experience and understand, looking back at that lifetime from that perspective, and then you draw away from it. You leave your body, you go up into the afterlife state, because that's where you basically have a life review, if you like. You decide what, you know, before you incarnate, you say, right, okay, I want to learn this, 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 and this. I want to experience A, B, C, D. Right. You come in, you do your stuff, you die, you go up there and you go, right, okay, have you experienced A, B, C, D? Have you achieved da 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 da? Yes, no, tick boxes. All right, okay. Right, what do you want to do now? What, you know, and it's very much you're communicating with your soul guide, your soul group. It's a negotiable thing, what you need to come back to learn and everything else. So what happens quite often is it depends what you need to do. Say, for example, if the person you wanted to, in your soul group, that you wanted to have this next particular experience with was still in a lifetime, you might have to wait for them to come out of that lifetime and back up into the afterlife state in order for you both to incarnate into the next role. So you'd have a waiting. If you were just sort of like, right, okay, actually, I really want to go down there and experience that, right? Absolutely no problem. Your parents are ready, off you go. You can literally go straight back in. So it's very, very dependent more on your spiritual level, to where your soul is developed at, as to what you want to know next. Also, whether the people that you need to be born into are there in place, ready, and what your goals are, you know. So some people say, well, I've been up here 40 years. You quite often get children who die will quite often wait in spirit for their parents, like if they had a very close bond, or they know, say, that one parent is really, really struggling on the earth plane without them. You get quite a lot, they'll say, okay, you know what, Mum, I'm going to wait for you. So when the mother then gets old or whatever and dies, the child will still be there to greet them.
Yeah, I've found this as well.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, there's no simple answer to that. It varies wildly. Yeah.
Rich, do you have any questions?
Yeah, right. I've had past life memories, and mine have always been quite negative, to tell you the truth.
All right.
I've had some bizarre ones, and it was kind of the line of questioning I wanted to ask you. I don't want to. They are silly questions, but I feel they need answering. So, like, have you ever had anyone famous who was a famous figure that's come through, like they've remembered that life? Have you ever had that, Deb?
I've had. Well, I mean, I did this article once, and I called it "It's Not Always Cleopatra," because I've had several people come through as Cleopatra. What you tend to find with that is there are certain figures, archetypes. So there's a very strong element of that personality that people are connecting with. I've not ever had anybody come through as a famous person that is checkable, put it that way, but 99% of people come through, they're just normal, regular, everyday people. I've had people that have been Egyptian princes, princesses, but you think how many of them there were in history anyway. Sort of certain degrees of royalty, but 99% just general general sort of everyday people. Yeah.
What about off-world experiences?
Weirdly, no. I've not actually, in all the time I've been doing it, I've not had anybody have an off-world past life. A couple of people I know have had that experience, but certainly not anybody I've come into contact with. It would be great. I'd love to have that experience, but yeah, not so far.
Have you ever?
Yeah, it's oh,
Go carry on, Rich.
Yeah, it's just I find it, because obviously in our field, I've had people who have had experiences of being off-world, and my own experiences, I have. When I was a kid, I had terrible nightmares about being in a concentration camp, and they haunted me for years. And I've had experiences of within the Arthur story, of actually playing a part in that. And when I was a kid, I dreamt of being in that story, if that makes sense. Not the one that they've sort of turned into the movies, but genuinely the real Arthur story. And it's just always fascinating me, because I would want to go back and back and back. I would want to go as far back as I could and see who I was, or what role I played in life back then. But it's always, the concentration camp one, absolutely the most devastating dreams I've ever had. And that was before I learnt what really went on in World War II. So, it always kind of like, it gives us some validity that I experienced these dreams, and then I found out about the history. It was sort of later, and it was quite something. I got to be honest, it was quite something. But I've talked to other people about this, but I have a weird thing where I remember being put in the life I am now.
Right. Yes.
And I remember being, I remember being in my house, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I must have been about, I would say around about the 3.5 mark, right? Maybe a bit younger. And I'm like, whoa. And I've still got somebody communicating with me saying, don't worry, you'll forget. You'll forget who you was then, and you'll fit into this role. And I've asked quite a few people about this, and they've not had the same experience. And I took all the memories I had from that life, and I carried them over, and they started to dissipate then. And I kept trying to hold on to them. I was like, I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget my kids. I don't want to forget the people I loved. And I was like, I remember trying with all my might to hold on to that memory, and then it just went. But as I got older, that has always stayed there. I think I held on to it so hard that it's just that memory of holding on has stayed there. I don't know if you've ever come across something like that, Deb.
Yeah, I mean, two things. First of all, can I say that when I first met you, I very strongly got the sense that you were a pilot in World War II.
Right.
Does that? So have a think about that and see if that connects anything with you.
I could definitely see you as a flyby, Reg.
I get the feeling an English pilot as well. I wouldn't want to say fighter pilot, bomber pilot, but I definitely get the sense, and I definitely get the sense you're on quite dangerous missions with that. That came across very strongly to me when I first saw you, so have a think about that. The second thing you're talking about is what we call walk-ins, which is basically exactly what you described there, what happened to you. I'll say a bit about that. One of my clients, I remember very distinctly, she came, I can't remember what she originally came to me for, but we did her session, and then we were talking about it, and she said, I've got no memories before the age of 8. Right, okay. So we got to her, and I said, well, what happened about that? And she said, I was really, really ill. And I remember my mum saying, you were really, really ill. We thought we were going to lose you. But you didn't, you pulled through. But she said, I've got absolutely no memories before I was 8 at all. And we went and did a regression. And what happened was exactly that. She was waiting to incarnate, and there was this little girl who was 7, very, very ill. And what happened was the spirit who is in that body of that little girl basically changed her mind and said, you know what, I've made a mistake. I don't want to be in this lifetime. I don't want to do what I've agreed to do. Can I go? And because this girl too, we'll call her, was ready to incarnate, they basically did a swap. So the spirit in the little girl that was very ill left, the new one came in, and that's why she recovered from the illness but had no memory at all before that period of time. But she kind of just, once we did the regression for that and she understood what had gone on, she remembered elements of her previous lifetime before she went into that body as that 8-year-old girl. And the other thing with the memories, most children remember their past lives. It's when they get to the age of either when they can talk or when they go to like sort of the schooling system, as soon as they hit that, when they get bombarded with other things, it just goes. But like yourself, quite often you're just left with that feeling, that sensation. You can just feel it rather than the actual memories. So yeah, I remember when I was at school, we used to skyve out the art class, and we used to sort of skyve out because our art teacher was really, really cool. You know, he plays sort of, saxophone in class. So we sort of used to get a pass, go to the town and go and see the kids at playgroup. I mean, so, oh, come along, look, here we are, look, draw us a picture. And I remember this little tiny kid at playgroup drawing this sort of aeroplane thing, it's like people. And there was all these scribbles. I said, gosh, what's going on here? And he said, oh, it's a plane. And it crashed and I fell out and I died. And I was just sort of like, oh my God, because I was like, I thought, what's he been watching? And then afterwards, I sort of thought, no, that's definitely a past life memory. He could remember this plane crash and dying. And I thought how fantastic it would be to if people, the most parents, if their kid turned around and said something to them, like you said before, that young girl, oh, I remember my last mummy, or I remember how I died. The parents would be like, oh, don't talk nonsense, darling, or don't be silly. And that's it, it's gone. It's just put a cap on it right from the off. So it would be fantastic if you could almost interview a whole load of kids when they're sort of 3 or 4 years old before they get into, and I think you'd be astounded at how many of them record past life information. And then that, because it is capped and blocked, if they do have any residual memories, it can come up as issues later on in life because they haven't had that chance to express it or they don't understand what's going on.
So would you say then
go on, Jess.
Well, I just want to pick up this point very quickly because it's something that we were talking about the other day, Rich, right? The fact that we forget, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's like I just say to people, right, I'd use the analogy frying bacon because I'm partially blind, right? There's certain cooking practices I struggle with, right? And I didn't really get confident with frying until a lot later on, till about 10 years ago, right? And it's like, I do always, when I talk to people about their past lives, I say, well, you don't truly forget. The forgetting is almost illusory, right? Mm-hmm. That's my sort of feeling about it. It's like, do you remember the first time you fried bacon? Or you fried any food, right? Do you remember the first time you made a cup of tea? No. Unless it's a specific emotional resonance with that specific memory, you don't. But it doesn't mean you're any less capable of making a cup of tea or frying bacon. So do you think there's a almost societal element then, as in the way in which this issue is addressed in children, that's responsible for us forgetting the past lives that we've lived? Do you think that is almost like, I'm not saying it's intentional or unintentional, I'm just saying, do you think it's a sociological aspect to it?
I think there is a part of that, but I think it's more, I think it goes deeper than that, because if you think about, you could have had 1,000 past lives. Now, if you're going to remember, you'd just be mad. Your physical brain could not comprehend all of that information at once. You wouldn't know whether you were coming or going. Even if you remember the last 5 past lives, you'd just be nuts, to be quite honest. It's just too much for a human physical brain to kind of cope with. In our Western society, certainly there's I mean, even now, people that do my line of work, it's the sort of thing you sort of talk about in whispers if you're in a God. Oh, yeah, are you into that? Oh, yeah. It's still not very open. Even, holistic fairs and things, there's a little people in the corner that do reincarnation. It's still a bit like that.
Yeah.
You think of like Eastern philosophies, reincarnation's like almost a standard part of their religion, if you like, or their everyday lives. And in India, it's like commonplace. It's just acknowledged. They don't even discuss it in particular because it's just an accepted part of how things are.
Yeah.
Christianity apparently originally had a belief in it, but of course it benefited the church to boot it out. But now, how many Christians do you know that accept reincarnation? So I think there's an element of that, but I think it's more for our own mental well-being that we are told or said, look, you're not going to remember that. But like you say, it does come through, because this is where the healing aspect comes into it. You can have physical issues in your current life. Now, I've said to you before, I've got an example of this that I'd be quite happy to read out. It's a personal regression that I did, and it explains this absolutely bang on about how it can come through. If you've basically, obviously, as you know, if you've got any physical health issue, you go to your doctor, your healthcare provider, you get it sorted, you get the test, you get it, do the advice, do everything. But if you're then still left with something that won't shift, then you have to start asking, okay, this has appeared for a reason. There's something I need to address as a deeper level here. And this is exactly what happened here. Let me just find, I've got quite some examples, but the main one is the one, it's called Tudor Trauma, and it's Nina's experience. And she did a one-to-one regression with me because basically what happened, she had like really severe stomach pains for years. We're talking like sort of 20 odd years. So I'll read out her experience as she's written it, and then we'll go through the past life that actually explains what happened.
Okay.
All right. So I had experienced severe stomach pains for many years since my mid-30s, and despite numerous medical investigations, different medication and holistic treatments, nothing had cleared them. Deborah and I were discussing past life regression, and she suggested a regression to see if there were any underlying causes for the stomach problems. I decided I had nothing to lose and that perhaps I may learn something useful, so we went ahead. So basically, if it's not a past life issue, doesn't make any difference, but you never know. So this is the past life that she came up. I find myself in a sparsely decorated room. I'm feeling very anxious. I'm a man of about 35 years of age. I'm wearing a cheap shirt and hose, so I know I'm in the Tudor period. The hose is brown and my loose shirt is open-necked and an off-white colour. I feel that I'm not poor, but certainly not well-to-do. I sense that I live in a town, and the familiar sensation is that I live in London. The anxiety builds, and I focus on this sensation. As I concentrate, I become aware that I'm involved in a plot against the king. My friends and I are horrified by King Henry's arrogance and his casual regard for the church. He has bankrupted the country for his war with France and has a reputation as a philanderer. People are struggling for food, and we are being pressed for more taxes to fight Henry's war. We have no respect for the king and want to bring about his downfall. We would love to dispose of him, but I feel that that's a step too far. My friends, however, are intent on assassination. I do not feel comfortable with this, but I hold my counsel for a long time. I feel that we are close to overstepping the boundary between revolt and treason. The half of me thinks, well, why not? As we would be killed if caught for whichever offence. I feel trapped, like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. At our last few meetings, I have attempted to be the voice of reason, to dissuade them from their purpose, but now I feel that I have put myself in danger. I fear that my friends suspect me of having turned against them. I hear banging and shouts of angry men at my door. The sensation of fear amplifies to one of terror as soldiers burst into my house. They are the king's soldiers and have come to arrest me for treason. I'm terrified. I try to attest my innocence, but they manhandle me outside. I have no shoes or doublet on. We move forward. The next thing I am aware of is my trial. What a joke. This is no trial, but a travesty of justice. My friends are lying about me. They are saying that they heard me talking of plans to assassinate the king. I am screaming, telling them it isn't true, but no one believes me. No one is listening to me. No one cares. I am just another dissenter. I feel like I'm nothing. I feel just how vulnerable life is. We move forward again. My body is broken and torn. I have been tortured, and in my tormented state, I have admitted to whatever it is they want me to admit to. I can no longer recall what I'm accused of. I am overwhelmed by feelings of anger towards my so-called friends and anger at the unjustness of it all. I feel powerless, and there is nothing I can do to save myself. It is a terrible, terrible feeling. I am dragged out to the public square where I am hung. I barely feel this, as I am so numb both in body and mind. I will be glad of the final release into death. But just as I feel myself drifting out of this life, I feel hands on my body and a release of pressure around my neck. I have been cut down. I attempt to breathe in, but my throat is constricted, and I still feel as though I am strangling. Disorientated and half dead, I am tied to the gallows and drawn. I feel the heat as my innards tumble from my stomach, and I smell the stench. I am past feeling pain. Thankfully, at this point, I die. I see myself rising above the scene. I feel calmer now, but still disoriented. I look down at that poor body below and still feel his sense of injustice and shock at the turn of events. It takes a long time for me to start to release the horror of the final events of that lifetime. At the same time, I can recognize that experience as just one of many in the journey of my soul, and that it too has a lesson and a purpose. So that was the actual experience, and how she perceived it differently when she'd left that body. So the healing outcome, this is what she got from that experience. I could instantly recognize this past life as the source of my deep-rooted feelings of distrust and almost hatred of authority. I could also see why I have trust issues in my relationships with friends and family. In that past life, those friends sold me out as a traitor to the authorities, even though it was I who was against the plan. I could understand that they did this out of fear. They were afraid that I was going to report them, and they just got there first. But the understanding of their motives has not quelled my anger. Injustice is something I feel very strongly about in my current life, and I will go out of my way to support disadvantaged people and to stick up for people's rights. I do not accept the government's status quo and will open people's eyes to the real world situation when I can. Interestingly, it was not the manner of death that was traumatic for me, and that comes up quite a lot. It's not the way that we die, and a lot of people are afraid to regress because they're scared of the death, but actually that's very often not at all what it's about. What affected me in my current life was the destruction of trust of friends, the feeling of not being heard, not being acknowledged to have a right to life, and the total sham of a justice system that was being manipulated by the people in power for their own agenda. Innocence meant nothing. Amazingly, and perhaps the most important result, is that after this regression, my stomach cramps disappeared. It also occurred to me that the age I was executed in that past life was the same age I was in this lifetime when the stomach cramps started. So, again, that's something else that quite often happens. If you get some sort of physical ailment that appears at a certain time, it can quite often marry up with the past life trauma. And the fact that it's occurred again in this current lifetime is sort of like your subconscious saying, you need to look at this. There's something going on. Here's an issue. You need to do it. You need to go and have a look at it. So, very powerful tool there.
Looking at that story, and there's a couple of things that I can see Rich is prepared to say something. Sorry, just that there's in our journey, we have had communication with spirit through various means. One being like the using like the spirit box and EVPs and that sort of thing. Now that kind of struck a chord with me, that particular thing that you just read out, because on one of the responses, Rich, I think I've showed you this. I believe the spirit that's coming through is my brother, and he's talking about Catherine of Lincoln. Now, her husband was I can't remember exactly, he was the Earl of something, but there was a lot of controversy apparently. I was wondering whether you could validate us or not, whether he was actually supposed to be the king, and Henry VIII actually came to power through nefarious means. Am I right with that assessment? Because I'm pretty much where I was, and it's just when you said that it resonated with
Right.
him telling me that particular experience. So it's added a bit of validation there that experience, what we were told, because he's told that he was, the way my brother put it, he said something like your rights were taken by a prick. Well, my brother uses the word prick a lot, right?
Right. Okay.
But he talks in this very small segment about his disdain for the monarch. He doesn't actually use the name Henry, but his reference that he uses is Catherine of Lincoln, and he said, I was married to Catherine of Lincoln, and I can't remember the name, but he was like an earl, and he was supposed to take, whether that's an archetype he's talking about or an actual genuine experience, I don't know. But it was quite strange. You should sort of bring that up. That I found that quite, for me, it was like, wow, that is, as you said, it summed up perfectly what people go through when they remember past lives. It's not the physical trauma that we focus on surrounding death. It's the emotional and the relationship that we have with people, places, and things that does create that anxiety that we tend to hold on to. Sorry, I just wanted to make that observation, because when I was listening to you reading that, I was almost in tears, because it brought up a resonance for me.
Yeah.
Rich, you were about to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're right. But no, I was just thinking. Well, it's a funny thing you said about the pilot, because I've had an affinity with like Spitfires and stuff, and I've met a few people, and I met one gentleman that actually flew them during World War II, and he had like 18 hours training, and he was told to go up and fight for your country, and I've always had a resonance with that, and I have had dreams about it actually, and I was just kind of thinking when he was telling that story, because every time I get on a plane, I have this most extraordinary anxiety. And I keep seeing the wings come off, and I keep seeing fire. And if I close my eyes, I'm either doing a loop-de-loop or I'm spinning.
Right.
I can't stop it. If my eyes are open, I visualize the plane exploding. And if my eyes are shut, I'm spinning. Either way, I'm going round that way or I'm going round like that. And it's just making me just on that story, because I've had people tell me that they've had past life regressions and they've got to the point of death, or where they felt a physical injury, and it's the pain they feel now. And it's quite something, because I've had the same experience. I was very ill when I was about 19, and my immune system just sort of crashed, and I developed asthma, IBS. I was having these horrific pains. I've been in pain ever since. They never found the cause of it. They told me I had cancer for 5 years, but they couldn't find it. And it did leave me in a bit of a state. It left me with like hypochondria and different things, because I genuinely thought, I was 19, I thought, they're telling me I got cancer, I'm going to die. That's the first thing that comes into your head. Well, I'm knackered. But you can see how, that ties in to what we experience now. It's an incredible field of research, and it really does need more research. It really does. I'm really, speaking to you, I've told this to Jazz, I've always been about nervous about having a past life regression, but speaking to you, I feel a bit more comfortable about it, to be honest with you, Deb. And I think it's something I might look into myself.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, you may well find that the stomach issues and everything is at that age of 19. I mean, as you know, like the Spitfire pilots' average age was something like 19, 20. So you could very well have. I don't get the sense that you died. I get the sense that you probably bailed out, but you probably had injuries after. So I mean, that might have been why you ended up in the concentration camp. I mean, what you can do. Are you used to pendulum dowsing?
Yes.
If you douse over your body, you could. I mean, I do a workshop. If you want to come and do the dowsing workshop. It's something you could, I'll send you a link and you can join it. I mean, it's December the 2nd. We douse 4 past lives, but what I'm trying to incorporate into it as well is you can douse to find out if your symptoms are related to a past life as well. You can douse over your body and ask, what these problems is this problem a current life? Is it a past life? It's just amazing. And even sometimes just making those connections can help break up the physical issues.
Well, I know I can tell you I can tell you a bit of the details of being in a concentration camp, but they're very negative, right? They're very dark, and it was always the same dream. And I was strapped to a chair, and they brought members of my family in, and they removed organs from them while they were still alive, and they were testing me for shock. And it was always that dream. And basically I was just like a guinea pig, and I think they tried to gas me, right? But for some reason I survived. Which I know that sounds bizarre, because it did happen, but I don't think they did it to the point that they did. I think I was almost like the runner to the, where they went to the final solution. I think I was like a test subject for that. But that dream of them, they did it. They killed my children and the people I loved, and they were testing me to see how shock would affect me. And it was always the same dream. And even when I hear people like, now it's like a tourist attraction, outfits, and I can't even contemplate. I couldn't even in my wildest dreams think about stepping foot on that land. I couldn't. If somebody said there's £1 million, you get to investigate it, and we'll pay you £1 million, I think I'd say no. Like, I think I just couldn't step across that threshold. For me, them dreams as a kid were horrific. So that's the feeling that's the dream I kept reoccurring of being in that. Yeah, but the Spitfire thing, I've actually been to like plane museums, but flying terrifies me. But I've always had a dream of just being in a Spitfire and just flying one. As much as flying scares me, I don't know why, and then planes are like old, but I would fly one. So when you said that, I was kind of like a bit of a whoa.
Well, I just had a message off your. I just had a message come through, so I was done a bit of research. Thanks, Emma. Basically, Henry's father took the throne from what she thinks was the Earl of Norfolk. I think you're right there. I can't remember his name, but it was the Earl of Norfolk. This title was inherited to his son, who then plotted to overthrow him, but was grassed up. So it looks like the Earl of Norfolk's son tried to overthrow Henry VIII and was grassed up. So it's looking... She's just done a bit of research on that now, and it's just looking as if, just as on a superficial level, there could actually be a link to the person that you've talked about in your writing that you just read to us, and the responses that we've had through the Ghost Box. Now that is incredible. Like little synchronicities like that, they blow my mind. They blow my mind, and it's like it just goes to show like how, and I'm sure you found this for your work, how answers come, and they can just come in the strangest of ways. And how people, it amazes me how like people, when you talk about soul groups and soul family, there are people I've met that they feel like family. When I sort of, going back years before I knew anything about this, you have a feeling of connection, but it's not anything you recognise. And then you realise, what it took me a long time to realise, is they feel like family. They're not, they're like family. That's the only way I can explain it. And it's strange how you have how these different things connect, and you can meet different people, and like what we've done on with this channel, like and you obviously that's a story that's an experience you've had, and it relates to something that we've kind of dug out over the course of the last 6 or 7 years. It just blows my mind. Sorry.
No, it is amazing. Yeah, I mean, like you were saying with the soul groups and people you can kind of just meet people, and you kind of, I mean, I can kind of, like I did with Richard, I can kind of see somebody and I can put them instantly. I know, at least I reckon, I know that you've had that past life type thing, and you can kind of do that. But also, the people that you are closest to, the people that you have the strongest love-hate relationships with, both of those are the people that you are in your soul group, because there's a thing that the people who you have the hardest lessons in life with are the people who love you most in your soul group, because there's underneath everything there is that such a bond. It's so close that only those people can take you through that experience. It's
beyond, it's not romantic, it's not
no, it's
the closest I can get to, and it's like a sibling. It's the bond of, it's like people say about myself and my partner, we're a lot more like brother and sister than we are romantic partners. We are much more in that sort of sense. So it's like, I've met a few members of my soul group, and some of them have no memory of it. Some of them have partial. Some have even just gone, oh, remember that in our lifetime? They've gone, yeah. I've had that kind of connection with people as well, where we both had the same memory. I never forget when I had with a neighbour of mine, and we described this big house, and for an afternoon we just sat drawing this big house, and it was like that went there and that went there. It's like, and outside there's this, and there was sports going on and different things. And it's like we both had the exact same dream within a week of each other, and I got an A3 sheet of paper, and we sat down and we just literally drew this house, and we both remember. That's how I kind of formed a bond. I don't with this person who turned out to be like a good friend of my mother's. But yeah, it was crazy.
That's great. Yeah.
Have you ever done your own, Deb? Have you ever done your own past life?
Yeah, I mean, I've done quite a few. I mean, I tend to dream quite a lot. But yeah, I have done quite a few of mine. There's a couple of mine in the book, which are good. One of the simplest but weirdest ones I had was a dream. Again, it was when I was quite young. I dreamt that I think it was about 16, 17 when I had this, and I had this amazing dream that I was married to this guy. And it was like you were saying before just now about the absolute bonding. You know, you were just like two halves of the same. You were and I thought, gosh, that is wonderful. I'd love to have a relationship like, you know, that would just be awesome. We were just literally as one. And I woke up and I thought, oh, that was an amazing dream. And I kind of knew it was a past life dream because the clothing and everything was set sort of, probably Edwardian. And literally that weekend, I walked down the high street. Weird, it must be some sort of magical high street, because it was the same one where this Buddhist just walked up to me and gave me this book. And I was literally walking up the high street, and this guy was walking down the opposite side, and it was just like, oh my God, that's my husband from my past life dream. Just literally walking down, you know, and I couldn't have gone up to him and said, oh, hello, just dreamt about you last night. You were my husband in, you know, Edwardian England. But it was just mad, that. So it was interesting, because that was just, I knew it was a past life dream, but to actually see the person from that experience literally 3 days later walking down the high street was just unreal. That was strange. So I mean, I've had some quite interesting ones. It's quite difficult to do it yourself. I mean, I do listen to some sort of audio guided ones, but the trouble is with that is there's never long enough in between that they stop talking that you can really kind of get into it. That's the problem with that. So, but you can program your dreams to get past life as well. But also the dowsing. I love doing the dowsing because you can just uncover so much stuff. The reason I got into the dowsing was just purely by accident. It's something I've always been interested in, but years ago I worked in like the middle of nowhere in the woods, and I was on car park duty one day, and I was just sat in this car park in this wooden hut, and I'd forgotten my book, and I was like, oh God, I'm going to be here for 8 hours. What am I going to do? oh, I know, I'll douse for past lives. So I just literally had like a plain ring and a long hair, and off I went. And I discovered that I was married in Victorian times, and my sister was in love with my husband, so she killed me, poisoned me, and married my husband within 12 months. So that was nice. But the relationship wasn't what she thought it was going to be, because obviously he loved me still, so she killed him. The good thing about that was that she killed him in such a way that she got arrested for it. They knew that she'd done it, and she actually got put on trial and executed for his murder, but they never actually discovered that she had poisoned me. It was put down as, I don't know, I can't remember what they used to call it in those days, you know, if you have stomach issues. So I thought, right, okay, this is interesting. So then I dowsed to find out if I knew these people in my current life, and it turned out that my sister in that past life who poisoned me was my best friend in this life. And we were sort of like this, you know, really, really close, would have done anything for each other. And you can see that was very much like a karmic payoff. You know, she killed me in this past life, so in this lifetime she was making up for it by like best friend. But it was fascinating because when you're dowsing, you've only got yes or no response. So you get quite, you know, how did I die? Accident? No. Natural causes? No. Okay. So then you sort of think, was I murdered? Yes. Then you got to go through stabbed, drowned, hung, you know, all of this. So you really have to start being quite ingenious with your questions, but it's a fascinating way of getting answers. Certainly, if you've got a boring day, yeah, go for it. So,
I might try. You know. Well, I want to take some questions from the chat and take a look at the chat, because there's been a few things that have come up, and just to sort of highlight a few things. So I want to say hello to Precious, to Adrian, to Gina, to Solar Function. I know I've seen you in here. Hello to Amanda. So hello to everyone who's watching us now. If I haven't picked up on the name, I'm just breezing through quickly. So there's basically a I'm just gonna read through some of these questions. There's a little bit of a joking going on about the window behind me. No, I'm not actually on the first floor, so no one's going to come and sneak in through the window behind me. So just to sort of bring that up, Precious says, I would love to have a past life regression. I would love to understand why my life is going down the path it is, and why my true purpose, what my true purpose is this lifetime. Gina also has asked, what if you find out you're something like Jack the Ripper or someone really, really nasty kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a bit like the Nazi SS officer we were saying earlier. You've got to kind of, I mean, I will say again about if you identify with a famous or infamous character, it can quite often be an archetype. But if you have enough information that you truly believe that you are Jack the Ripper, you've got to kind of say, okay, you know, try and put it in perspective. In your lifetime, you are going to be, in your soul lifetime, you're going to be a murderer, you're going to be a murderer, you're going to be a victim, you're going to experience every single thing it is possible to experience as a human being, both positive and negative. So, you know, you probably need a little bit of therapy or a little bit of healing to help you get through that. But the most important thing to remember is put it in perspective. You know, it's this big, that is one tiny little drop in the ocean of who you were. And also look at it, what was the point of that lifetime? You know, okay, there was anger for women, you know, what was that about? Try and understand what the lesson in it for, what was the reason of that lifetime. Try and draw out of it anything you can learn that's going to help you understand and grow and overcome whatever it was that caused you to be that person in that lifetime, because the answers are all there. But mainly don't panic about it. You know, we've all done something like that, we just don't all remember it.
There's some obviously who have, and this is something I know you wanted to talk about. There's some who have this school of thought, and I've seen this school of thought a lot more lately. And I think there are some researchers that have come out with this, and I think it's been personally, I feel it's been put across in a way that it's slightly different, but is actually the same thing when you look into it a bit deeper. Is the feeling of we're actually trapped when we keep repeating lifetimes. that we are trapped because we keep experiencing things because of some form of karmic trap that keeps us coming back and stops us moving forward. Now, whether there are some people who believe there's a physical trap or it's more of a psychological thing, what's your view on karma, and do you think it plays a part in why we keep coming back? And do you think there's any credence? Have you ever had a client that's felt like he's trapped here, or coming back against their will, or anything like that?
Karma is very widely misunderstood. What it isn't is a form of punishment and reward. That's a very man-made thing. Religion has really pounded that home to people that, for example, if you cheat on your husband or whatever, you're going to come back as a slug next time. And they're very much, there's this movement that if you're suffering in this lifetime, it's because you've been a bad person in the previous life. It's not. It really isn't. It's about what we've already said about the learning cycle. Karma is basically challenges and issues in your current life that you've got to deal with. And if you find that you're not dealing with them, or you can't deal with them in this life, they will be represented to you next time around in a different scenario. So classic example, say if you've got that you hate your brother, there's a real, and you go your whole lives where you're either, you just can't get on, you can't deal with each other. There's a fundamental issue, say of jealousy, and it rips your lives apart, and you end up not speaking to each other, and you both die and you haven't resolved it. When you come back next time, the jealousy is the issue. So you may then come back in your next lifetime as father and son, or neighbours, or twin girls, and you'll be given that issue to deal with again. So when you get things that are repeating, or people that feel like they're stuck in a cycle, it's basically that they're not learning the lesson, they're not resolving it, they're not knowing how to work out. They've basically got stuck in a situation, and you will keep coming back to try and get it, but you'll come back in different situations and scenarios to try and deal with it. What some people don't understand is you've pre-agreed to this before you've incarnated, remember, but what you can do is you can say to your spirit guide, you know what, enough, I've done everything I can to resolve this issue in this lifetime, I'm tired, I can't do it anymore, I'm giving it to you, I'll deal with it later, take it away. And that's fine. It's one of those things that people don't realize they have the option to let it go.
Yeah.
Now, if you're doing this kind of work, if you're doing regression work, you can do card readings, you can dowse for it, you can have a regression. There's numerous ways that you can get into the nitty-gritty and understand what is going on in that. And it's literally about drilling those repeat cycles down and finding out what is the core problem. Because once you understand the core problem, then you can resolve it. So yeah, feeling stuck is not some form of punishment. It's basically repeating patterns are there to show you that you're doing the same thing over and over and again, and you're not getting it.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's not deadlocked. You can get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that quite significantly. Rich.
Yeah. No, I agree with them. I don't think it's punishment. I think it's more of experiencing every aspect of life, and that's why we don't live for a million years. We only live for a short lifetime, so we can experience as many aspects of life as possible until the point in the future when we've learned enough about life to get it right. It was a question of Amanda about I was talking to you earlier about a child. Well, it's Amanda's child, and she was saying if she remembers past lives past the point of 9, will she probably remember them up until she's an adult? That was Amanda's question, because she does actually have a recollection of her past lives.
Brilliant. I mean, I would definitely, if she's got them at 9, it depends on the kind of child, we're talking about, but generally, absolutely. Write them down. Write them down, start building up a picture, because quite often, or verbalize them. As you know, when you start, it's like if you have a problem, you start verbalizing it, you get the answer. So it's very much like that. So if she starts talking about them, she'll remember more. If she starts writing them, she'll remember more. It just opens it up and keeps the flowing going. So the more she's talking about it or writing it down to her book, then it'll keep the information coming. And that's just amazing. It's an amazing thing to keep. Yeah.
I noticed Gina on the chat said about that we all have sad past lives, and it makes her not want to remember hers. Well, I don't think it's so much sad past lives. Obviously, trauma has a massive effect on the soul. So I think that's going to be a potent memory that I think as you well know, Deb, you bring through that sort of anguish.
Yeah.
Happiness isn't going to cause a problem in my life now. If in my last life I was like the happiest person on planet Earth, then in this life I'm like, well, but I think
it's the strong memories, isn't it? It's like there's one lifetime. I think it's my last lifetime. All I can remember is my wedding day. Now I don't normally. I'm not a big thing on marriage or anything else like that, but I know. I can just remember that. I just remember. I can remember what I looked like. I can remember what the other person looked like. I can remember what they wore. I remember they had something in their hair. I don't know if it's my actual past lifetime, but it's a very recent. It's within the last 2 or 3 lifetimes. I just said. I know that person has been a sister, a friend, a brother. There's been like different things. Like this. So there's some lifetimes I can only remember just one specific. It's just one memory, and it's because there's something in that memory. There's something in that memory that holds passion, and 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, that tends to be sadness and trauma. What's the strongest thing of sometimes of when you love? It's losing that love. That can be the hardest to sort of reconcile. And I think I agree with you there, Rich. Have you ever had anything come up? And I'm gonna be a little bit cheeky here. Have you ever had anything come up where people have remembered, say, like something like we might mention like off-world, but have you ever had anything like where people remember like the future, or they remember something strange, or ones that have been like a little bit odd, or sort of like different? Then, if that makes sense. If not, it's just. I'm kind of curious.
The only thing I can kind of it's been in a conversation with people rather than in a regression. But I know a friend of mine did she have a regression? Yeah, I think she had a dream that she was a dog in a past life, and she was like, okay. And then she went to have a card reading, and it was confirmed. Yes, you've got a lot of dog energy around you. I feel like you were a dog in a past life. And when she thought about it, she remembered that when she was young, she said, yeah, actually, I used to spend most of my time under the table with the dogs in the kitchen as a kid. So she felt more comfortable with that, with the dogs under the table in the kitchen and sitting up, with the adults having a meal with the mum and dad. And so that, it could just be that she felt, as part of the pack with the animals. So again, that could be one of those archetypal type things, but I've not had anybody. No. Can I just go back to what you were saying about happy, sad memories? Because there's something that reminds me about that's important about, you're saying that you always remember like the sad stuff. The reason you remember the good stuff, like you remember your wedding day, I remember having one where I thought it was most wonderful. I remember being a boat builder as an old guy on a hillside in Cornwall, looking down over this little fishing village, and I built little clinker-built boats. And I was sat there enjoying my picnic, and I had nothing. I had this little hut that I lived in, and it was one of the most contented lifetimes I've ever had. And it's a reminder that you have had good lifetimes.
Yeah.
One of the saddest ones I had was when I met this chap in his wonderful marriage, and he was an architect, and I worked for the big house, and I've been in service since I was about 12, and we got together and we lived in this house, got married, and we lived in this cottage on the grounds. And he wanted to design an island in the middle of this lake, and he went out on his boat and drowned. And I just spent the rest of my life, and our child had died when he was about 2 as well, and I just spent the rest of my life basically just sewing in the dark, and I was so unhappy for like the next 60 years, and then I just died, like just really unhappy. And I thought, oh God, how depressing. But the message from that lifetime was, I had to learn about sorrow and loss. That was the purpose of that lifetime, to understand and learn about sorrow and loss. But also was that I'd spent that lifetime alone. I didn't need to do it again. So out of that, you have a sad thing. It's what was the message there? What's important there? That's the thing. And also, when you get people who seem to just breeze through life and everything goes right for them, and they have no challenges, and you just want to kind of, that's not fair. They get everything, falls on their plate. I've come to the conclusion that they've had a really unhappy, bad life before, so this is basically an easy life for them. So it goes back to that one where you have a really nice life every now and then, where you're not going to learn anything particular. It's just having a break from all the learning, because learning's hard, the learning and the experiencing and everything else. So every now and then you will just have a really chilled lifetime that is just a reminder of life is there to be enjoyed. And that's probably why you don't remember them so much, because it obviously, like you were saying, it's the emotional impact of something that you're going to remember and bring forward with you. But you will find that if you do regression on a regular basis, you will pick up some happy ones, just as a reminder that you do get them. Yeah, and it's rest. You need rest. The soul needs a rest, every now and then. It's hard work being here.
Well, there was two more questions. There was just two more questions I kind of wanted to ask you. Have you said obviously it's a progression. Have you come across people who are getting to the end of that experience, or have accomplished sort of the end of that learning process then? The way my brother explained it to me, he said, if you imagine a river, and that river starts up in the mountains and it goes basically down to the ocean, and that river winds and turns and winds and turns, and every so often you got to stop, and you get off at the stop, and you learn different things, and then when you're ready, you get back on the boat and you head back, and eventually you reach the ocean. Have you ever done regressions with people who have reached the ocean then, so to speak?
Yeah, I really like that analogy. I think that's great. Yes. You tend to find. I remember a woman in particular. She'd gone through a couple of lifetimes. She already had a really good handle on what she needed to find out, and she said, "I've got a feeling this might be my last lifetime." But it was almost like a double check. She just wanted to make sure that she'd done everything she needed to do in this lifetime before she went through. And then had to think, oh heck no, need to come back. And when we were in the regression, we went through the regressions. She did 3 past lives. We went up into the spirit world, had a chat with their guide, and she said, that is definitely, I won't be coming back again after this one. I've done everything I need to do. I'm happy with that. Yeah, I know I won't be coming back. And then she had a chat with her spirit guide and got it confirmed. And we sort of said, okay, well, what are you going to do then, if you're not going to incarnate? What is your next role? And she said, I'm going to be in training to be a spirit guide for somebody else. So that was interesting, because it's like once she'd got to where she needed to be, she would then stay in spirit and be somebody else's guide, which is great, isn't it? So
definitely. And the other thing, have you ever, obviously with everything going on in the world right now, we're in a really sort of turbulent and crazy time, and time where I think the esoteric side of things is taking sort of center stage, and it's becoming a lot more public domain. And humanity, I think, this is my personal opinion, and it's just the way I feel about it. I think that as we have been in other points in history, we are currently at a turning point. We are at a point where we can go one way or we can go another way, right? With everything that's happening with the lockdowns, the virus, and everything that's happening, in America, and the protests around the world, and all that sort of thing. Do you ever get people that come back solely to help humanity, Pretty much the likes of like people that say Dolores Cannon or Michael Newton have sort of worked with, and they've had people come and say they are genuinely here to help humanity in some way, shape or form, even if it's just holding energy for them. Have you ever had anything like that?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, the way we're going to get through this is we're moving into a different vibrational energy on the Earth planet and, you know, the Earth plane. And the way that we're going to get through this is it is like a lifting consciousness. And those who are light workers now, those who are working in any of these sort of fields, we are all here at this time to actually help move, you know, to shift the vibrational energy up. I mean, everyone in there who's working in this kind of field, that's why we're here at this particular time, and that's what the goal is, and that is very much what's happening now. I have a couple of friends who listen to a lot of channeled stuff, who have said that the light has already, you know, the light workers, we're already there, we're going to win, it's going to be overcome, but it's hard to remember when you're going through this kind of stuff. So it's very important to keep those vibrations up. And, you know, some people will always be deaf, some people always don't want to know, they won't hear, that's fine. So we have to listen and act on their behalf and just keep everything held up. But yeah, it's definitely one of those turning points in history where it's very, very important, and I think it's interesting that more people are coming over to the esoteric side than religious side. There's hordes of people moving away from organised religion because it just isn't doing it for them anymore, because it just doesn't have the answers, and what answers they are being given just doesn't match with what we now know is really going on. So yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, definitely.
Well, any further questions, Richard, before we end today's show, or is there anything you'd like to say, Deborah?
Well, Amanda did ask, have you ever come across people or like a child that remembers their past lives personally, like that has a, you know, I mean, she remembers details. Have you ever come across anything like that before?
I don't personally work with children, but I know I've got friends whose children have remembered stuff. One of my friends, it was quite interesting, she was very small, her youngest daughter was very small, we were just talking about sort of all sorts of things in reincarnation in general, and my friend had a daughter, then sadly had a miscarriage, and then had her youngest child, and the little girl was just sitting there playing, and she went, "Oh yeah, but mummy, I came to you before, but it didn't work out, so I had to come again." And she had remembered that experience. Wow. So even like people, you know, with miscarriages and all of this kind of thing, it's again, that's another experience that a soul has to have. So it's trying to remember that as well. But that you know, and I've lots of friends, kids, one of them said, "Oh, I remember how I died. I died when I was 30 and I had a red car and I was driving over a bridge and I went through the railings into the water." And we were just like, "Oh, wow, okay, wow, that's interesting." You know, gosh, you know, you know, but yeah, it's like, just like it's perfectly normal. And I think we were like, great, you know, let's write that down. But I think you know, if anybody hears anything like that, because a lot of it gets put down to, oh gosh, she's got a really good imagination. Oh, the child's so creative. She's got invisible friends. That's another one. Invisible friends. Yes, they can speak to spirit. You know, it's really important that parents kind of are kind of awake to this stuff. But yeah. Just amazing.
That is good advice, because that's something I have always said myself. If parents listen to their children more when they're saying they're going through something, we'd have a lot more adults with knowledge of the paranormal and the unseen world. And there's a bit of a thing about the chat. They keep hearing voices, and I just wanted to say to the people who are watching, every time we do one of these Loud Now debates, because we're using the microphones, and spirit are curious, and sometimes they come through, and sometimes it's little voices, sometimes it can be feedback, so you've got to check it out, guys, right? If you're watching, the last show we had a bit of a strange one with voices. Spirit are interested. We're trying to educate, we're trying to inform, we're talking about light-hearted things, spirituality. I know some of the stories, obviously, we talked about at the beginning with dark, but they lead to an enlightenment. So, you know, this is what happens. Is spirit do sometimes they're talking, they're having conversations like so it does happen. If you're in the chat, you go back when the stream is ready tomorrow or whenever it's ready.
It takes
You
about
go and have
12
a look,
hours,
guys. Yeah, about 12 hours. Go back, timestamp it. If you hear anything, timestamp it. And we can check it out. You can tell us, and we'll tell you if we think it says anything. If you're watching,
Well, we've got one from Halloween. When we did, what was it? Halloween that we
Halloween.
did. We had an EVP. We're going to put that in a future video in the next couple of days because it links into a session that you did, Rich. Which I think we need to cover.
Yeah, definitely need to cover. But I got to say, Deb, this has been absolutely. I knew it was going to be interesting. But this has been incredible.
It has been brilliant.
To, like, your experience. Oh my God, this is, and I would, if you leave your details, because I think I might like to try this myself.
Yeah, cool.
And if you could help me with it,
well,
that would be incredible.
All Deb's details are going to be in the description below this video, guys. And as Richard has said, that there's an Amazon link to Deb's book. This is the book here. We'll just bring it up so you can see it on the webcam. It is called Past Lives, Present Healing, a fascinating collection of past life experiences. Now, what I like about this book, right, and I've read through some of it today, what I personally like about it is the fact that there's almost an analytical side to it. It's not just when you see books by mediums and stuff like that. It's always, I've had this experience, I've had that experience, this is all wonderful and everything else, right? What I like about this book is you can see there's several examples. She talks about the example, and I like what Deborah did just now with the Henry VIII story, is she breaks down in it a bit of analysis and gives a bit of like why that past life memory was significant and what was the healing outcome behind it. There's some tips as well in here about remembering past lives, if I remember correctly. I think it's on page 105. The Amazon link to this is not a sponsor. It's the Amazon link to this is in the description below this video, and a link to Debbie's Facebook page where you offer the Zoom things from, and your website where you offer that from is going to be in the description below this video as well. If you guys do want to do have any issues or can't find anything, just drop us an email, paranormalhour@outlook.com. Let us know, and we'll send you we'll send you any information you might need. And obviously, if any of you guys, I hope I'm not presumptuous in saying, if any of you guys watching this either now live or later on wish to investigate this further for yourselves, I'm sure Debbie would be happy to hear from you. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Any questions, just get them over to me. No worries. Yeah. I mean, I've just literally this afternoon sorted out some more workshops for next year, January and February. I've only got 2 more this year. The past life one's on the 14th of November and the Dowsing one's on December the 2nd. But yeah, all the information in this Facebook page. But yeah, if anybody's got any questions about anything, yeah, just contact me. I'm happy to chat about that.
Perhaps we'll try and we'll take a trip up to Cumbria sometime next year and get Richard to go through a regression.
Yeah, cool. Come and do it. Yeah.
Yeah, right, I want to do it. I want to do it.
See,
it's good. Yeah, it'll help clear up a lot of stuff. I think it'll be interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, Deborah. I'd love to have you back on again, so please do stay in touch with us.
Awesome. No, thanks, guys. It's great.
It's been wonderful to talk to you. If you ever feel, and I say this to all our guests, if you ever feel there's something that comes up you'd love to talk about, right, I'm only an email away, and we can sort something out, because the point of this channel is to build a community around the paranormal, and look at all aspects of it, no matter what people are experiencing, because, and create a place where we can all help each other and have create healing for each other. So I just want to say that to you. Thank you very much for coming on. Any final thoughts, Richard, or any final thoughts, Deborah?
No, I'm good. I had a great time. I can't think of anything else I want to pop in there.
And Rich?
This is fascinating. It's a fascinating subject, and I like the fact that you're using something that the mainstream may be a bit thing about to help people, and that is like that's an incredible thing. And yeah, my hat's off to you, Deb. I mean, obviously doing something wonderful for people, and they're getting healing out of it. You know, that's one of the main jobs of, like, for me and Jazz, is if people experience the paranormal, and we've got to go in and heal them and tell them there's nothing to be frightened of, and it's a big deal. It's not, you know, it's a big deal. And yeah, my hat's off to you. I think this is fascinating, and the stories, oh my god, incredible. So yeah.
Yeah, just one more thing to say as well. I think all the healing and everything is awesome, but I think one of the most powerful and amazing things out of it is that everyone who's been through the regression, they're no longer afraid of death. And I think that, death and dying is a massive taboo, and I think if it can ease anybody's mind about that, I think job well done. So it's incredibly honouring to be able to work with people and help them overcome that. Yeah, it's great.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for watching, and we will see you soon for another video. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Love and light to you.
Love and light, Parapeeps. See you in the next.